which moves us seamlessly into the L, and the laughter, of how important laughter is in getting through life. And it seems like it was literally your saviour.
Yeah, it was. It was. Now, I had a couple of tools, and this is where the multi-hyphenate comes in. Music was also an escape for me, and movies was an escape for me too. Like, wow. And even now I do want to make sure that I actualize that dream of being in films at some point in my life, because that it'll be a gift to that child who used to disappear into them as a kid. And yeah, those tools. I think that when you're a young person, like a really young person, and you're in a situation like that, you have so few resources that when you do find things that work, whether it is comedy or escapism or a mixture of both, you make the most of it. You hone those skills because, yeah, it's what you have.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm the classic, got bullied at school, so use the humour to then disarm people. But it does make you quite a well-rounded individual, shall we say. So what makes you laugh, or who makes you laugh now? Because I know we have lots of laughs, as you say, getting very absurd. But what really gets you going?
I love laughing with you, Mary, and joking with you. It's one of my favourite things. It's for me, it's always the really far out stuff that's really not socially acceptable, but just because it's weird and over the top and too much. Like, I delight in that so much. And I think that also comes from being the kid that was often too much, for any given situation. And too flamboyant or too over the top or too excited, hyperactive, or too obsessed or like with majesty, so it's the absurdity for me. And it's the comedy, but it's also a playfulness. That's what sort of gets me going. I was thinking of a couple of examples, but then I can't remember the names of them, so I can't reference things. But it's where other things intersect too. It's ridiculous, silly dancing and clowning and fun, funny and wacky raps and references to things that are out of this world, and it's the wild and wacky humor that I love deeply, and even now it's the silly, trivial. The silliest, most simplest things can make me laugh the most. And, I love fart jokes. Like, I have not outgrown fart jokes,
So have you got a favourite fart joke? Because we do ask everyone what their favourite joke is. It generally puts people on the spot because they can't think of any. But I thought you would have a good favourite joke.
Yeah. I just did one recently. I'm just going to quickly reference it.
Is this one of your own?
And it made me giggle a little bit. And it was just from our advanced comics course, one of the prompts. And I said, I've chosen to live on cloud 9 because 10 and 11 are too close to God's butt.
That's a perfect insight into your comedy brain, I think.
Yeah, I love it. So, I never get sick of farts. They say for comedians, farts are like 1-year-old comics, but maybe my growth is stunted. I feel like I'm Benjamin Buttoning my comedy.
Well, I think you are tapping into like a childlike playfulness, aren't you? And I think that's something that we lose as adults. I've just been reading a book, and there's something called the Humour cliff. And I'm just going to make up the statistics because I can't remember them. But there's something like when you're a child, you laugh on average 90 times a day, for example, when you're at like up to the age of around 10. And then you get into your 30s and you laugh around maybe 4 to 5 times a day if you're lucky.
No!
and it's this cliff and it falls off. But then as you get older, there's like a big dip, and then once you get back into your like 60s, 70s, suddenly you start finding things funny again. Now, whether that's because you've got through the stress of surviving life and middle age, and then maybe you've got grandkids and they bring that playfulness back into your life. But it's a really sad, isn't it, to think that people might only be laughing 3 or 4 times a day.
Yeah. I think responsibility, to be honest, can be a huge killer, a huge dampener of humor. And I feel like that maybe that's where that comes in with kids and older adults, because even recently I've had to make a lot of lifestyle changes, and I'm going back to the drawing board and looking at how to reconfigure everything from the ground up. And I'd found that the way that I was operating in my business and the exercises, how I was going about things, there was so much responsibility and not enough weight taken off my shoulders, just too much I was carrying without actually looking at more effective ways of supporting myself from underneath and in the support system of doing the things that I want to do. And that overbearing level of responsibility that almost felt like I could never keep up with it was really sucking a lot of the capacity for me to be funny. Even while teaching and creating comedy, I could feel it really dampening that ability. So I think, fun tip, helpful tip, if people are wanting to tap into more more humor again, that would definitely be a recommendation, would be to kind of look at the level of responsibility that you have in your day-to-day life and how to make things easier for yourself, so you can kind of let loose a little bit and relax and not feel like you're under the pump, so that you can actually play a little bit, have a bit of room to play.
Yeah, well, I think that comes back to what I was saying. I think you're a brave and fearless person, is that making a living as a creative, I think, is the most difficult thing you can do, because it's so hard,
Yeah.
for people to value you, to value what you're offering,
Yeah.
and then to actually monetize that as well whilst maintaining your creativity. That's a real struggle, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, it's I'm in an interesting spot because I've been making a living from my creative outlets for the last 3 years, and I'm I'm in a stage of reassessing that and going, what changes need to be made for this to be more sustainable for the long term. And it's interesting to be in a position where I feel like I have a lot of questions that are unanswered at the moment, and I'm sort of sitting in those questions more. I think when I speak to the likes of yourself, Mary, and other people that I trust that I'm close to and need to let off steam, I'll be like, this is awful, this is cooked and you can't, and it's the worst. And, I say all those heated surface level feelings of the experience. But on a deeper level, I don't believe a lot of those surface experiences are true, are the reality of the situation. I just think that a lot of the surface experiences that I experience and other artists feel are the challenge and are the adversity to understanding how to do it, because we see it. There are people out there successfully doing it, and it's just, it can be a slog and a hard road as you work it out.
You've recently gone viral on Instagram with a difficult comedy gig experience, haven't you, with a heckler, which really just reinforced everything that you were dealing with in the moment, but 3,000 fold. I
Yeah.
mean, do you want to tell us a bit about what happened with that reel?
Yeah, and for anybody that's listening and wants to check it out, you're welcome to. It's still up on Facebook because I can't actually archive it on Facebook, but on Instagram I've actually archived it because it was just a consistent stream of harassment, and I was in my head, I was weighing it up, going, is this worth it? No, I let it go for 2 to 5 days, I think. And then eventually I just went, this is never going to end. And, what I'm doing online is needs to be more than this moment of harassment. And so I think that was also the battle, is I was going, I'm getting so much attention. This is fantastic. But also this is not what I want my brand to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is not like the comedy courses that I'm selling, or this is not the jokes that I'm telling, really. So yeah, how much, I think, I turned it off, but I think it got to all up, I think it got to, between Facebook and Instagram, it was up to 600,000 views, I think.
And
which is pretty
thousands
wild.
of comments as well. Thousands of comments.
Oh,
The comments, they are like a
yeah.
bin fire.
Yeah, it was wild. There was one session alone where I deleted 400 comments of just harassment. Of just sexual DB harassment. It was, it was wild. And so for anybody that's listening, the clip, to be brief, the clip essentially was me trying to do stand-up comedy. Well, we successfully doing it until a man in the audience was yelling out, "Show us your tits," several times and interrupting my punches. And it got to such a distracting point where, as a comedian, you'll always spin things and be witty and clever and then bring the audience back to focus on what you're doing. And it just was the third time around, and it happened again, and it was at the peak of a massive build-up of one of my longer form jokes, and I was just so frustrated. And so then it just got to a point where it was hit 3, and they pretty much demolished my set anyway, and I just thought, this is it, and I'm just gonna throw them out. So I just told them to leave the room, essentially. And then when they finally left, everyone just gave loud applause. And I said, well, I can't remember, I said something smart ass I said many things that were very smart ass after that. But essentially this clip is, being sexually harassed on stage, me kicking out this guy, and the audience applauding. And it really did spread like wildfire, which was pretty interesting. And it really brought out all of the trolls from the basement, that's for sure.
Oh my word. I know. I mean, some of them, it just reinforced the very point you're trying to make by ejecting the person in the first place. But it was all the
yes,
well, you're a comedian, that you should expect this, you should put up with this, you should be able to put them in their place. And I think, as we said at the time, can you imagine someone trying to do brain surgery with someone shouting over the gallery going, "You're flaming galah," as I was been trying to get that in, because obviously I'm picking up all the Aussie lingo. But yeah, there's really no other job that people think that it is acceptable that you put up with harassment. No. And I think that comes back to what you were saying to start about the culture of where it's come from, that is just accepted. And I think certainly over here that is cracked down on a lot more now. Certainly in comedy clubs, people are told not to heckle. You'll just be hoofed out. I've been in a comedy club in London where someone said something racist. They were gone, no questions. And again, the audience cheers because it's ruining it for everybody else. They haven't come to see some knobhead in the audience. They've come to see the comedians.
Yeah. And I think I was just surprised because usually in our audiences, we do intimate shows. We're not doing, theatres of hundreds of people at this stage. We're doing, intimate shows of 40, 50 people. And so it's our community, it's people that we connect with and that sort of thing. So I've never actually had to give a stern talking to before a show to be don't heckle, or for me it's kind of have common sense. Like you just wouldn't anticipate it. Like I said, like in a theatre, you just wouldn't anticipate that you need to say, don't get up and scream things in the middle of numbers, please. You know what I mean? Like people, we don't do that. We don't give that, warning when we go to theatre, because we just expect that people aren't like Neanderthals. But and so that's why I was taken by surprise, because I don't do pub shows. Like this was at a bar, and this was at an event that I'd curated, and I had no idea. And, it wouldn't have happened. And what was interesting is it wouldn't have happened from our audience, because our audience was made up of people that came to support the comedians. And so they would have respected them and wanted to see them do well. And that was the interesting thing, is that this came from the person that came with the owner. So they had no connection to the space. They just came for a night out. So, yeah, that being said, obviously, the processes have changed here on out. But, the sorts of events, there are different ways that you can go about solving this issue, particularly when you're someone like myself, where you're producing events, you're putting things up and you're running the show. You can definitely forewarn people for sure and just say, hey, here are the standards. But I actually don't really want to do that, because I think that in any other situation I will just remove someone. Like I'm not gonna even be talking to people at that level. Do you know what I mean? Like it's that kind of thing of like, if you have to say don't spit in somebody's face, like the person that you're having to say that to clearly isn't like capable of being in that space and holding that level of respect. So
yeah,
it's kind of like 1 + 1 = 2. If you can't work that out, you probably shouldn't be watching a show and you need to be removed. So for me in future, it's just removing people straight away. And, after that situation, I told the owner, I said, we're not going to come back. We're not going to be performing here. That was not appropriate. And there are several different ways that will be deterred in the future. Like, for instance, the next show that we have planned is for the end of January, and that will be at a really lovely, in a private room of a bar for this event. And the event will also, come with drinks and canapes and things like that. And so it'll be a greater price for the ticket and for the whole experience and the show. So once again, you're going to attract a different demographic, and people are going to come in with a different sort of level of respect for what you're doing. And outside of that as well, I'm booking a theatre as well for a showcase next year too. And we'll be performing more in theatre spaces as opposed to, these other sort of spaces where the courtesy and the respect is just inherent in the form. So that, there are some good, lovely little changes.
Yeah. Lessons
that have
learned.
already come from it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, you're saying about theatres being better, but they actually had to call the riot police to a performance of The Bodyguard in Manchester, because 2 members of the audience kept singing over the top of the performers, and it caused like a mass brawl in the theatre because everyone was so sick of them singing. So it can happen in theatres as well. Maybe just in Manchester, I don't know, but crazy.
Wild.